It's
okay, perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is to review applications for consent and minor variances as they apply to certain lands in the municipality of Meaford. First, I'd like to read the land acknowledgement, which says, we would like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash, unceded First Nation, and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis people and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters. I'd like to start by introducing the members of this committee. On my far right is David Cramp. Next to him is Ed Ormsby. My name is Cam Hall. I'm the vice chair sitting in for Terry Williams, who is unable to be here today. We will be joined in a few minutes or before the end of the meeting, hopefully, by Peter Tovell as well. The municipal planning staff in attendance are Denise McCarl and Helena Fascinato, planner. Gabe Pucci is the development services assistant and the secretary treasurer of this committee. This committee is legally required to make decisions that conform to the Provincial Planning Act as well as the county and local official plans. The municipal planning staff have prepared detailed reports and recommendations for this committee based on those documents. In addition, municipal policy and procedures encourage the community to share their thoughts about a proposed application. Your constructive comments will help us to make informed decisions on these applications. For those who have pre-registered for today's meetings or who are in attendance here, you will have the opportunity to speak. I will call upon you at the appropriate time. It is not necessary to be solely in favor or in opposition to an application. You are welcome to identify those elements of the proposal that you do or do not like or ask questions. The applicant will also have the opportunity to respond to any comments or questions should they wish to do so. Anyone wishing to receive notice of the decision on the application being heard today will need to contact the secretary treasurer of this committee via email at planning@meaford.ca or by phone at 519-538-1060 extension 1120. Gabe, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yeah, the agenda, the application B14 has been withdrawn as sorry, my microphone was off. Yeah, application for consent B14 2023 is actually being withdrawn as underlined in the agenda, and that's the only change. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'd ask members of the committee, does anyone have a pecuniary interest in the development that's being considered today? Thank you. I'd like to have a the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I have Ed, thank you. David will second it. Thank you very much. And they adopt the minutes of the previous meeting. Thank you, Gabe. Now, this is a meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to consider an application for minor variance under Section 45 of the Planning Act for lands known as 206080 Highway 26. The requirement to hold this meeting, there must be at least 10 days notice as prescribed by the Planning Act. Gabe, can you please confirm the public notice was provided at least 10 days prior to this meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Notice was given on October 5th, 2023, giving more than the required 10 days notice.
Thank you. Gabe, can you please summarize the application and provide us with any comments that have been received concerning this proposal?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the property owner seeks to build a 55-unit townhouse development on the subject lands. The applicant requests the following relief from zoning bylaw 60/2009. First one, to reduce the required front yard setback from 6 meters to 4.04 meters. The second one, to reduce the required exterior side yard setback from 4 meters to 2.39 meters. The third one to reduce the required interior side yard setback from 2.4 meters to 1.2 meters. And the fourth one to reduce the required rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 4.19 meters. If approved, the variances would apply to some, but not all of the townhouse lots. And regarding comments, we received comments with no concerns or recommendation from Gray County and Historic Saugeen but comments have been received with recommendation from Gray Sobel Conservation Authority, which reads the GSCA does not share the interpretation that the minor variance can be applied to certain lots on the subject lands prior to those lots being created through the registration of the vacant land condo. We therefore request that any further changes to the rear yard setbacks for proposed lots 1, 2, and 11 beyond those shown for each lot on the submitted plan for the minor variance be submitted to the GSCA for review and comments. Provided the above comment is taken into consideration, the proposed minor variance is acceptable to the GSCA. Thank you, Mr.
Gabe.
Chair.
Alina, as the planner, do you have any additional comments?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So Gabe, you did a good job of summarizing the application and the comments provided from the agencies. I just wanted to touch on the comment received by Gray Sobel. So they've shared concerns as the lands are currently one parcel, and so they feel that the setbacks should apply to that one parcel as a whole. So the subject lands are under draft plan approval for a vacant land condominium, where there will be individual ownership of units. So in a vacant land condominium, the individual unit shall be considered lots for the purposes of applying the provisions for front yard, side yard, and rear yard setbacks. This variance is requesting relief from the required setbacks of the zoning bylaw based on the lots existing within the draft plan of the site. So through the registration of the draft plan, this parcel of land will be divided into those individual units. So I just wanted to clarify that if approved, the requested setbacks will only apply as shown on the site plan sketch, which is listed as a condition of the decision. And the sketch will also be included in the decision as a schedule. So the applicant can't apply the setbacks to a change in lotting, and they will have to conform to the setbacks as shown on that sketch. And thank you. That's all for my comments.
Thank you. Has each member of the committee visited the subject lands, and does anybody have any comments with respect to their site visit?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So just to clarify that, then each lot is going to be identified as individual when it comes to the variances. So we're looking at multiple variances instead of one. Is that correct?
Yes. So this will be registered as a draft or as a plan of subdivision, as a vacant land condominium plan. And all those units will be considered their own lots. So this variance is looking at it with that in mind. Yeah.
Through the chair, I have another question, a comment, but maybe when the applicant comes up, I would like to address them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking of the applicant, is the applicant for this application present? Thank you. I'm assuming you wish to speak.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Kristen Runny. I have an presentation as well. Sorry, I was too fast there. Kristen Runny from Georgian Planning Solutions. I'm a registered professional planner, and I'm the agent acting on behalf of the property owner. And I'm going to just start out the presentation with the new name of the development. We've been calling it for Meaford Haven for 12 or 13 years, and the new owner has changed the name to Bay Bounds. So I just wanted to introduce that as well. Moving forward, that's what it's going to be called.
Bay Bounds?
Bay Bounds, yes.
BOUNDS?
Yep.
Oops. There we are. Thank you.
And there's the logo. Next slide, please. So as mentioned in the notice, the purpose of the public meeting this afternoon is to consider a minor variance from section 6.2 residential zone standards to implement a 55-unit townhouse condominium development, a vacant land development within the first phase of the Bay Bounds development. Next slide, please. This is the property location. It's 206080 Highway 26, just on the sort of north end of Meaford. Next slide, please. So just sort of further to Helena's conversation with you about the development, this is a copy of the draft plan. And so block 4 is the area in which we are looking at the townhouse development and that the variances are going to be applied to. Next slide, please. And this is the site plan just for your information, what it looks like. Next slide, please. Okay, actually, the next slide, I've got a little bit of a visual switch, might be a little bit easier in terms of identifying the variances. The first variance that's being requested is a front yard setback. There's 3 of the 55 lots that require the variance, and they're identified in red on the plan in front of you. We're requesting a minimum front yard setback of 4.04 meters from 6 meters. That's on just one lot. And if you can see the green arrow in the middle of the plan, there's a red dot to the left of it. That is the lot that has the smaller setback in that area. The majority of those 4 areas identified in red is because of the configuration of the block and the road network. All 4 of those lots are corner lots with significant side yards, which will help with minimizing the reduced setback visually. As well, we have maintained the required size of the driveway that conforms to the zoning provisions. So there's no impact on parking for each of the individual units. The next request is related to exterior side yard setbacks, and those areas are identified as yellow in the plan on the screen. And again, the request applies to 3 of the 55 lots. The variance would be from 4 meters to 2.39. And those yellow dots where the arrows are at the top of the screen are the 2 areas that are the smallest. The request is based again on the irregular sized block that has a few pinch points within it. The third area of the minor variance is the interior side yard setback, and they're identified in blue. The requested setback is 1.2 meters in 4 areas of the development. 1.2 meters still allows for access to the backyard between those townhouse blocks and provides appropriate fire separation as well. And the final variance is in relation to the rear yard setback, which are identified on the plan in green. The requested variance is for a minimum rear yard setback of 4.19 meters. That's not for all of those areas. There's 18 green dots on there, and 16 of which are right at 6 meters or more. The other 2 are 4.19 and 5.34, and I don't know if you can see the green arrows. Those are the 2 lots that have the smaller lot setback in the rear. However, those are corner lots and do have larger side yards. So the outside amenity space is still very similar to the other units within the development. This variance request, all of the variance requests, helps us to achieve the density that we require for the site. I also wanted to note that in regard to the vacant land condo, each of those areas and townhouses would become essentially individual lots. So the owners would own the backyard and the front yard as well as the unit. And also want to note that lately, in the last probably 3 or 4 years that I've been working in the area, there's been a lot of demand for townhouses, and 6 meter rear yard setbacks is somewhat standard in both Grey County and Simcoe County. So just wanted to note that it's not something that's completely unusual. Also, provided within my planning justification report, the application was evaluated using the 4 tests of the minor variance. As well, the staff report also reviewed the application considering those 4 tests, and were satisfied that the application meets the 4 tests. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Are there any of the other people present here wish to comment on the application? No one here wishes to.
So I'll ask, maybe comment or ask a couple of questions. To your point of, I don't know what the 4. Yes. Sure. Tony, Tony, last name is Hayroe, Hayroe. I own a home bordering on the subject land. So I don't know what the 4 tests are. I'll give you my own personal test. Just looking at the variance request, they're between 30 and 50% reduction. So I find it hard to imagine how we would define those as minor, but I'll leave it to the experts. I guess the question for one, I think I'm not sure we heard the number of, I think it is blue dots that were related. You were talking with, I think 3 for red, 18 for green. My memory's gone. On the blue side, it's how many? 4. Okay. If we look at separate sort of economics from required design, in the sense that it sounded like you were saying there's some lots that just won't physically work. Like you can't build a house on them unless the variance is required. Those are different, it would seem to me, than variance for benefit of the homeowner. So I guess one request to consider in the thinking of this is to separate those two things. Like I'm not sure what the original planning guidelines were based on. And so therefore, I don't know why we would want to vary from them when they're presumably well thought out in the first place. That's why they're in place, as of the plan of 2009. So why not leave those aside for the ones that aren't physically required in order to be able to, have an effective lot size to build a home on? So I guess that's my comments and questions.
Thank you. Would you like to respond?
Yes, please. To start, I'll start with the last question just because it's fresh in my mind. It doesn't mean that they're not developable and that we can't build a house on it. It just means that we need some tweaking. It's not a rectangular or square lot. So there are some areas where we have curves, and the area based on our stormwater management pond block and the cul-de-sac and the environmental lands. And so there are small setbacks. However, the rest of the areas are being achieved. So if you could put up the plan with the green dots, with the dots on it, just to give an example. It's kind of hard to see. Anyway, for example, in the green area where the arrow is, the setback on that corner is deficient from the zoning provisions within the bylaw. However, on the other side, it's fine. And it's an exterior side yard. So the area associated with the backyard area is still similar with the rest of it. So it's not really compromising. It's just a little bit different in terms of the layout of that area. It looks like a lot of variances related to the rear yard setback. Again, I've mentioned that that's not an untypical setback associated with townhouse developments. And again, it's not it's a condominium. So it's not like a typical subdivision where you have single detached lots in association with the setbacks. So I don't know if that helps, but the 4 tests of a minor variance. So I'm just going to pull it out so I don't forget them, but I know how to. So the first one is conformity to the official plan. And so we are still proposing residential. The designation associated with this particular development is residential. So there's no change in that regard. So it still conforms in terms of the official plan. Same with the zoning bylaw. My interpretation and my professional opinion is that it still is minor in nature, and that the zoning provisions that we're asking for minor amendments to still conforms to the general idea of the zoning bylaw at the end of the day. The other one related to that is that it's appropriate development for the land. Again, residential, it's designated and zoned for residential, so there's no change in the use. And then the 4th test is minor in nature. And yes, there looks like we're asking for a lot, but I think in terms of the actual size of the variances, I still think that it's minor in nature, and that's my professional opinion. Yep.
Ed, you had a question earlier. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Kristen, very nice display, by the way, and it's a proposal probably I'm sure the municipality can use. I'm just wondering, has all efforts been exhausted in order to try and fit a plan into that without?
Yes.
I mean, I realize that we need units, but would one or two less units work and in the same area? Like if I have a 100-acre farm, I can't grow 110 acres of crop on it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Unfortunately, based on where the variances are, it's the width, it's the longer width area of and we've got road sizes that we need to accommodate. We've got the building side that we need to accommodate. And we're trying really hard to get to those setbacks. So there's really, we did a lot of wiggling before we came before you. Yeah.
And the other thing is, I think I feel, and as I say, I think it's a great proposal, but it's an interpretation of minor variance, I guess is what, and when you look at the map, as you said earlier, it looks like a lot, you know. So.
Well, and I was trying to be helpful in terms of showing you where the actual variances were. And again, if you look at the green dots, those ones are slightly, like they're not a big variance in regards to that. They're mostly 6 and above. So 18 of those units that are identified as green are 6 meters or more in terms of the backyard. A couple of them are 6.89, so they're close to the and a couple of them are 7.2, so they're close to the 7.2. We are just talking about the one that is the smallest on all of those.
Right.
That's sort of how that works in terms of. But again, as mentioned by Helena, the variances won't change, and this is the site plan that has to move forward in terms of those variances. So it's not like we can go back and redesign the whole thing to go to the minor, the lowest variance that we've asked for.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. I just, when I was reading over your application, I noticed that you had the variance is minor in nature, and you say, and I thought it was well phrased, a variance may be considered minor where the scale of the request is marginal and the proposed relief does not result in a greater adverse impact on adjacent properties, uses, or area. It must consider the impact of the proposal on the adjacent properties and the compatibility of the proposal with their surrounding land uses in the area. To the gentleman who spoke earlier, I just thought you indicated that minor is one of those things that's not really cast in stone, if you will. But I thought that was a good attempt to address that.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that as well. And I'll just note as well that this development does have a separation from the existing neighborhood. There's a stormwater management block that's adjacent to the property line. So that does help with that separation between the existing development and this proposed development as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Peter, welcome.
First, I apologize for being late. As a matter of getting a vehicle started. I wonder, first of all, I have no problem with the front yard setbacks. My question is in terms of what's the dimension between the units number 17 and 16 and 28 and 29? It's the very narrow slipway through. What's the dimension of those separations?
I have to orient myself with that particular. Just give me a second. You said unit 16 and 17?
16 and 17 and 28 and 29 across the road.
Oh, those are the interior side yard setbacks. So that's between the buildings.
How's the surface finished?
Likely going to be grass, I would think, between those two.
Okay.
Yep.
My only comment is, and my experience as a planner in the city of Toronto is the fact that this is a really narrow space that's actually prime for drug dealing.
Oh, well, I hope that's
because it can't be observed very well.
It actually is 2.4 because it would be 1.2 on each side of those buildings.
Yeah, but 3 meters is like the minimum that the city now does because of that issue. It's unfortunate, but it's reality. I don't want to say that Meaford is going to be like that, but you never know. It just means it can't be supervised or surveyed by any kind of video cameras. Very hard to anyway. My other point is the fact, and again, I apologize for being late, and you might have covered this, but my concern is at the intersection, the red circles at number 1 and number 55 entrance into the whole development. That's a pretty tight space. And is the sight lines for cars turning okay?
Yes.
Because I know there's a mandatory amount you can do for that thing.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And I'll just mention too that what you didn't hear that part. Each of those areas for the front yard setback, they all have the required size for the parking lot for their parking area.
I appreciate that too. Yeah. So I have no problem with the front yard setbacks. I think it's actually great to tell you the truth. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the attendees?
Okay, Craig Dallin, I live on Meadow Lane. What are the height of these buildings? Are they all single story or is there higher complexities or?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. There'll be two-story townhouses and they will conform to the zoning provisions height, which I can't off the top of my head note what that actually is. I've been focusing on these four, so unless Denise or Helena remember. But we will conform. We are not asking for a variance in the height.
Thank you. Any other questions from the attendees? Are there any other questions from the members of the committee? Gabe, could you provide us with the suggested decision and conditions of the variance?
Yeah. The recommended decision is that I apologize through you, Mr. Chair. The decision, the recommended one is that the Committee of Adjustment grants minor variance application number A13-2023 to permit the development of the lands in accordance with the site sketch as shown on Schedule B, like it was shown in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call for a motion of the decision as read by the Secretary Treasurer. In favor? Sorry, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. Second? Thank you. Before we continue and make a vote, is there any further conversation or input from the committee? Peter, could you maybe just expand a bit so I as a layperson, when it comes to planning, would understand?
Sorry, the issue is the width between the buildings, between units 17 and 16, 28 and 29 and 39 and 38. I just looked at it again. It's where, and it should be, I think, a minimum of 3 meters. My concerns are that it is a safety issue and it's come up before my planning experience, the fact that if it's less than 3 meters, it becomes a prime place, unfortunately, for crime to happen. For drug dealing is the first thing that happens. It's hard to survey and have surveillance and control. And I don't say it's going to happen here, but it's a very narrow space and hard to survey.
Just as a thought, the applicant, it's I realize there's not a lot of flexibility from your point of view at this point in time. Correct?
I just want to make the committee aware of this condition. That's all. And my concerns.
Yeah, because technically after the motion, we go straight to the vote. So if additional questions.
Okay, so again, we have to
We have to move by second again. Because we went to the motion and seconding and then we went to questions again. So probably we have to do another.
No, we can continue on. Yeah, they're allowed to speak in between. Thank you.
Okay, and in that case, that I now call the vote of the Committee of Adjustment. Those in favor? Opposed? It by a vote of 3-1, it is carried. We support the decision put forward by the planning staff. What's my next step, Gabe?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the next steps is that the applicant will receive an email with the decision and notice of appeal, period on Friday. And also the applicant can take down the sign from the property. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think that concludes the business of the committee at this point in time. Is there anything else we should be looking at, Gabe?
Not at this very moment, because the application for consent to consider consent B14 2023 is being withdrawn as communicated the email and added to the agenda. So we don't have to discuss that.
Do we have any documents to sign with regards to this before we get to the end of the meeting? Now, Gabe, is Peter dissented? Is his signature turn up on this as well?
No, right, no.
I wouldn't think so, yeah. Okay, if there's no further business of the committee at this moment in time, I'd look for a motion to adjourn. Ed? Peter? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Just before we close, the next meeting of the Committee of Adjustment will be on November 2nd, 2023 at p.m. or same place, same time.
Same bat time, same batch.
Yeah. November 22nd, yes.